Beautiful. I see some interactions. Beautiful. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And huge thank you to Techqueria for having me. My name is Adriana Dominguez, and I will talk to you today about imposter syndrome. And in case you're not familiar, I'll give you some examples from my own life stories, which I'm so excited to share with you today. But first, a little bit about me. This is a bit about myself on one slide, a few images that I associate with. And if you read my bio, you'll see that I was born and raised in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. I'm a huge Dolly Parton fan, but at the same time, I grew up Mexican-American, first generation kid, and I sometimes felt out of place. And for this reason, it was sometimes very hard for me to figure out where I belonged in the world. So I'm so grateful for opportunities like this one and communities like this one that make us feel seen. You'll see there are some Selena references. I absolutely love the movie, and I felt myself so seen at a very young age. I currently live in New York, and I'll tell you a little bit about my story for which I moved here and the reason that I'm here speaking to you today. So one of the things that I realized early on is that a lot of the environments that we're in as two different cultures, growing up in two different cultures, is that sometimes you may not feel seen. And that can really shape you in so many ways later on in life, and even in the way that you interact with others, and even in the way that you lead or you find yourself interacting with even coworkers, and even in relationships. So that's really what inspired me to speak to you today about my own journey. Now, I am not an expert in confidence, but I'm a huge expert in hearing my own self-doubt and hearing my own negative reactions to myself, which is why I thought it would be a great session and thought it would be a great and interesting story to tell you. So if you are not familiar with imposter syndrome, I'm here to give you a story that will explain. And I would love to see any of your interactions in the polls that I'll send out. But first of all, as I mentioned, live in New York. I moved here December 2018, and I moved here for a job interview. And the reason being because I had worked with someone at a consulting firm while I was in Mexico City, and he called me to let me know that he was leaving the company. And first of all, I felt devastated, but then I thought, this is my chance to move to New York. That was my dream. It was my absolute dream to live in New York. And I saw this as an amazing networking opportunity. And I told him, I'm really bummed you're leaving, but if there's any opportunity for me to work on your team, or if I could connect with someone, I would absolutely love the opportunity. 6 months later, he reached out and said, we're hiring if you're interested to come for an interview. I immediately said yes. And I thought, I'm going to crush it. I'm going to prepare as much as I can, and it's going to be amazing. I'm going to get to New York. They flew me for the interview. I spent a weekend there to envision my life living in New York. And a couple weeks later, I got the offer. And I was so happy. But then I instantly felt also this dread. I suddenly felt like this was a fake offer. And I really couldn't believe that this was happening to me. So in that sense, I suddenly felt all of that confidence I had in saying, I'm going to crush it. I can do this. Suddenly I felt, oh gosh, this was a mistake. What were they thinking? What was I thinking I could do this? A few months later, I was packing my bags. I had 2 suitcases and a backpack to get me through my first winter months in New York. And I had lots of going away parties with friends. I had my family there to support me at the airport. I had my dad and my mom saying, Mija, tú puedes. And I felt everyone's pride, but I myself just felt so vulnerable and small. And like suddenly I did not deserve to get on that plane. I was on the plane and I was looking at my one-way plane ticket, and I just thought, this must have been a mistake. What was I thinking? I'm going to be back here in no time. Eventually, I get to New York, and for some reason, it worked out. I was into the job, and there were a lot of times where I was doubting what I was doing and if I was doing it right. It's been 6 years since that experience, and I look back on it, and I think I had so much self-doubt that I was telling myself I wasn't smart enough, but no one actually told me I wasn't smart enough. That was me telling myself. for some reason. Now, if you have had any experiences like this, if you have felt at any time this instance of anxiety and self-doubt, then you have experienced imposter syndrome. And for those of you who don't know what that is, I am here to explain it to you. And hopefully you felt some of my anxiety as I told my story. But imposter syndrome is essentially this feeling of inadequacy, despite clear evidence of our success and our competence. It's very much tied to not believing your own achievements, and it's really about your self-perception. Now, if you have felt this, you know the feeling. And the funny thing is, preparing for this, I looked into quotes that famous people, writers, philosophers have said about imposter syndrome. Apparently, we've been talking about this for centuries. So you'll see, even Roman poet Virgil said, they succeed because they think they can. All the way to Oprah, who also said, who does she think she is? She used to think this, and now she has the courage to say, this is who I am. Now, these quotes I leave with you because everyone goes through this. Every successful person, every single person on the planet has at some point thought, I can't do this. What am I thinking? A lot of the research, though, says that in order to battle imposter syndrome, you must be comfortable with just putting yourself out there and getting uncomfortable and teaching yourself, essentially training your brain that you can indeed do hard things. Now, I'm here to talk to you about 3 ways to battle imposter syndrome. I've gone to workshops, I've talked to people. Honestly, this has been such a fascinating topic for me because it's interesting how our own minds can make us feel so small and so vulnerable, which is why I love talking about this. For that reason, as I've gone through talking to many people in these workshops, I'm here to package those into 3 tactical ways that you can battle your own imposter syndrome. The first one being empower yourself with hobbies. Now, there's a lot of research, and if you know me, you know I come from a data science background, analytics, so I very much love researching. And one of the things that I found was that there's lots of articles that say that hobbies are very much linked to empowering ourselves and reminding ourselves of how competent we can be in many aspects of our lives. So I won't go into the details, but if we think about imposter syndrome, essentially what this is it's a lot of self-doubt, this feeling of we won't succeed, feeling of inadequacy, and having this closed negative mindset of, I can't do this. What am I thinking? So how do we transform that mindset into self-confidence? As in, how can we transform that into, I believe I can do it? Maybe I don't know how right now, but I'll figure it out. How can we transform that into a feeling of accomplishment and mastery? And eventually be able to evolve our minds into thinking, I got this, and having a growth mindset. It's okay to be scared, but that first step in battling with imposter syndrome is having confidence. What got me to New York, for example, is what I call my own self-delusion, but I realize now that was actually self-confidence at the time. This can take time, and I would say give yourself grace, but this is an important thing to realize that you can actually practice this. Now, in true form, since this is a tech conference after all, I asked ChatGPT to help me create a table of hobbies and things that they can teach you. So you'll see here that there's a hobby on one side, what they teach you, and then a learning or an affirmation you can take back after learning these hobbies. I've tried a lot of these. I love trying new hobbies. So if you have any new hobbies for me to try, please let me know. You'll see, for example, gardening. My mom, in particular, she loves gardening. She is the plant goddess. Teaches you patience and nurturing, and you can take that as an affirmation for yourself as I can cultivate growth in myself and others. For anyone who loves dancing, confidence and expression is something that you can learn. Even video games. I love video games now and then. So that is also something that you can take back and apply to other areas of your life. Now, in particular, I myself love weightlifting and racing. I actually did not really get into fitness until I was in my 30s. And honestly, it was because of COVID, because I was quarantined alone. I got very sick, and it made me realize I need to get healthier. And one of the ways that I did that was dancing in my living room, going for runs, weightlifting, racing, and that eventually got me to feel more confident to try other things. Now, I was always very much a very chubby kid. very much into my teens, and I never really felt confident enough to even go for a run when I was in elementary school. I hated doing the mile run test that we had to do. And I'm honestly so disappointed in myself that I didn't actually try running much younger, because now I really love it. Not the best runner. Don't ask me about my running time, but I absolutely love it now. And I feel like I belong on the running track when I go to the park. So here's some examples, and here are pictures of my own events that I've gone to. And you'll see here that I've gone to obstacle course races. These are races that are essentially like a 5K, 10K, but you have physical obstacles you have to do throughout the race. I am very scared of heights. And the first time I did one of these, I had to go up a vertical cargo net, and I couldn't even put my leg on the other side. And you'll see there's a picture here where I am, very happily making a pose there. And I had thought before doing this particular one, oh, I've done this before. I've conquered that fear, so I can do this again. There are other instances here that you'll see things can get very messy, but for me, that has now trained my brain into thinking I'm actually stronger than I thought. And things can get messy in life, but I'll figure it out. I'll get to the other side. I will always face that obstacle, and I'll figure it out. Dancing and yoga are two of the things that I absolutely love in terms of helping me find the right mindset when I'm also dealing with something in life and I need to maybe shift my gears into thinking I can pull from a different persona. You'll see here, there are pictures of myself in dance classes and also in dance video workshops that I'm very much a fan of here in New York. And a lot of this has taught me that you can sometimes pull from different places of your personality and be so creative and put yourself in a situation that feels so vulnerable. And that confidence will stick with you in other aspects. So there's a picture here where I'm in the middle of Times Square, and we did a dance workshop where we learned a choreography for about an hour and then went to Times Square to film it. And it was one of the scariest things I've ever done, because in the middle of Times Square, there are all these tourists and they have their phones and they're recording, and you have your teacher in front of you saying, all right, let's go, 5, 6, 7, 8. And it's so scary because you're thinking, everyone is looking at me. Oh my gosh, what if I mess up? What if this? But everyone's cheering you on. And it was fun. I felt like I could do anything after that. So that's what has worked for me. I have learned so much about myself through these experiences and through these hobbies. And I invite you to explore those hobbies that you enjoy if you don't already, or think about how those hobbies have helped you and shape your own confidence through trying them. Second thing to do when battling imposter syndrome is to keep a list of accomplishments, both work and non-work related. Now, I saw this graph here on the left-hand side that made me think just how powerful our minds could be. Because if you see, we will spend most of our time alone. And I'm not saying that in a sad way. I'm saying that we will spend most of our time with our thoughts, in our mindset, thinking. And it might as well be worth making sure that your mind is a nice place to be in. Now, I love to think that whatever I'm doing today, whatever thing I'm trying to learn, or whatever hobby I'm trying to do is helping myself in the future in some way. So one of the things that I was thinking a lot about when I saw this graph was, at some point, I'm going to be, by myself. And if I'm thinking only negative things about myself, that's just going to make me miserable. So I like to think of this, I'm doing this for my future self, that I need to hype my future self up for whenever I find obstacles in my life. Now, while I was living in Mexico City, I learned a lot of funny phrases and lots of slang. And for anyone who has lived in Latin America, you know that each country has like some fun slang now and then. One of my favorites was hearing "Te crees la última Coca-Cola del desierto," which was, you think you're the only Coca-Cola left in the desert. And this would come up whenever someone was bragging about themselves, or whenever someone was coming off as like too much. Se cree la muy muy. And I would sometimes get this when I moved to Mexico City, because like I had moved when I was 16, and some kids would say, "Oh, you think you're all that because you grew up in the U.S." And at the time, it kind of hurt my feelings, but it also made me think, that's interesting. Why would that be bad though? And like, why is it bad to come from two cultures? Like why should I be punished? And it made me realize also that I wasn't very clear on my accomplishments because I wasn't able to say, yeah, I'm proud of being from two cultures, and yeah, I'm proud of my American accent. So that really hit me at the time. And I'm so proud now. I've embraced being from two cultures, but I faced a lot of instances where people made me feel less than because of my upbringing. And for that reason, it's super important to remind yourself of all the things you've done and all the accomplishments that you have throughout your life. This is just an example, and you can add to this, you can remove from it, you can have just two things if you want, if that's all you need, totally fine. But one of the things that I realized throughout my experiences in both my personal life and work life is that it's so important to know how to talk about yourself and really hype yourself up. When I was studying in Mexico, I applied to the UNAM, which is one of the most prestigious schools in Mexico, in Latin America. And when I went into the workforce in Mexico, I remember in consulting, someone said, "Oh wow, you got into this company, but you're from a public school." And I thought, what is happening? Like, this is not okay. I went to a great school, and it made me feel small and less than because I had, I had I want to say the audacity to believe it at the time. And I was like, wait, but that's not a bad thing. Like, I'm here. And I always kind of felt less than also because I don't have my master's, and I kind of just figured things out throughout my life and just really learned as much as I could from people. There was another instance that comes to me when I was in the 6th grade. Some kid came up to me and said, "Hey, are you in illegal?" And remember, this was Tennessee, lots of different judgmental people. And before I could respond, another kid said, "How could she be? She's smart." It made me realize that I was going to go through so many judgmental moments, and I needed to be careful with what I believed in. There was even a moment when I was working, and I'll tell you about this later, but essentially there are going to be moments in your life where people are going to tell you things and you should not believe them, but rather have this list for yourself. No one has to see it. It could be written down. It could be in your phone. It could be on your computer, but somewhere where if you're really feeling down, you can motivate yourself and you can remind yourself of just how great you are. There are going to be some moments where you really need it, and you can go back to this list and say, no, wait, I did that. I can do a lot of things. I'm actually great. The last way to battle imposter syndrome is creating an advisory board or a circle of trust. Now, we've talked about hobbies, which I see as an external environment that can help you. We've talked about keeping a list of accomplishments, which is more of an internal motivator for yourself. But what about those times where you really can't get yourself up and you need someone to help you and to remind you and kind of be a mirror to you when you're really feeling down? That's where the advisory board comes in. I call it this way. It can be your circle of trust. It can be your 5 closest friends. But this is helpful to think about that it's super important. We are humans after all. Now, there are some quotes here that I love to think about or that came to mind when I was preparing this, because this is really about the power of community. We are social beings. We are very much people who, first of all, within our cultures, we love getting together anyway. But it's so important also to be able to inspire each other and learn from each other and realize that we can do things alone. Yes, you can. But there are going to be moments where you might need some help, and that is totally okay. And we sometimes come from a culture where it's not often seen as a good thing to ask for help, but rather we have to be resilient because it's in our DNA. We have to figure things out on our own. And I think one of the biggest mistakes we can make is thinking that we always need to think that way and that we should never ask for help. So a lot of things that I recommend are really learning from others and having a community, or what I like to call the advisory board, of people that you can reach out to. So for example, I recommend having these types of people in your circle. And I'm not saying this has to be the way. These are things that I've seen talking to people and reading on the kinds of communities that you can learn from. If you're familiar, there's a quote out there that says, "You are the average of the people you hang out with the most, and show me your friends and I'll show you your future." I feel like a lot of the times that throughout my life I felt like I was stuck, I would reach out to people who I saw that I felt that they had everything figured out and they could teach me in some way. That's really the purpose of this. So first one I recommend is having a cheerleader to hype you up. We all probably know someone like this, and they are the person who's going to say, you got it. That you say, oh no, I'm having a terrible day. I don't know what I'm going to do. No, you got it. You're going to figure it out. It's going to be amazing. You got it. You got it. This person might not always give you I want to say a reality check, but it's really good to have on your bad days. Have a mentor or a coach to inspire you. Someone who can say, listen, I'm going to tell you a story to get you going. Here's a quote that I can send you. Here's some research. What do you need? And a coach and a mentor, they can really be there for, whatever reasons you need. There are different coaches depending on what you need. There's career coaches or life coaches to help you through transitions in your life. So really think about where you need that support. And that's how you can find someone who can help you. A coach is meant to walk with you through the journey, and not behind you, not in front of you, but walk with you to let you know that they're there for you. I like to call this third person the accountant to ground you. And I thought of this because of one particular friend who, whenever I say something like, yeah, I'm not going to be able to do this, I don't know, I don't think, she's like, I don't understand, because you've done all these other things. I don't understand why you're having this self-doubt. And she's just amazing, an amazing friend. And that's the kind of person who you want to make sure you have within, honestly, any community, who can say, I know you're saying these negative things about yourself, but I'm looking at the history and no, it does not check out. You can do this. The fourth person is a confidant to be your mirror. And this person might be the person who really knows your raw, I want to say, fears and what could be stopping you. And it could be someone you really open up to. Totally okay to open up to everyone, but maybe a mentor or coach might not get into the deep level of what you need. So also, this is a good call out for your mental health. Like if that is a therapist for you, if that is someone who you want to go to when you're really facing certain fears, I highly recommend having someone that you can really be open with. And you will feel seen, very seen when you do that. Finally, experts to learn from. What can they teach you? If you want to be an entrepreneur, go hang out with entrepreneurs. If you want to be an author, go meet other authors. If you want to learn from tech, come here, come to communities like this, and have really people that you can reach out to and say, hey, you're doing something I want to learn how to do. Can you teach me? What can I learn from you? You'll be surprised by how many people will be willing to help you. Now, how can they help you get out of your head? So many ways. There are so many instances that I've mentioned that you will find throughout your life that will make you feel less than. I think in particular, I have found so many opportunities to teach people about who I am. And I think the only thing I'll say here is I feel like sometimes this community, our cultures, we feel so much judgment from the outside world because of the color of our skin, because of how we grew up. I mentioned, growing up in Tennessee, people sometimes assume that they already knew my story, and they did not. But that even happens with people of our own culture. There was a moment where I was confused with a member of the cleaning staff by another person of the cleaning staff at an office I was working at. And I didn't figure out what she was asking me until later. This was a conversation in Spanish. And it wasn't until later I thought, oh, and we looked at each other and she was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Perdón, que vergüenza. And I was like, no, not at all. And I remember telling my parents about this, and they said, Mija, you should be proud, because, she might not be aware that people who look like her can get in places like you, like this. So if you ever find yourself in a moment like that, where you're feeling that suddenly the only thing that is the color of your skin, remember who you are. Remember where you came from. Go to those hobbies. Go look at your accomplishments list and go talk to someone who can also help you remind yourself just who you truly are. So we've talked about different imposter syndrome tactics. We talked about hobbies. We talked about having a list of accomplishments. And we've talked about having an advisory board that will help you whenever you have those moments that you doubted yourself. And I will say, takeaways from this, there's so much that I could tell you. I could give an hour-long talk on how to listen to the negative voices in your head. But I will say that the biggest thing to take away from this is that you're going to feel imposter syndrome. If you haven't felt it in the last week, maybe you'll feel it in the next year. But really, it comes down to embracing who you are, where you come from, and being part of a community that understands you and people who see you. It's so important to recognize when you're feeling doubtful and to have an action plan for yourself. I think that sometimes we often get so much in the way of trying to be perfect and trying to show the world that we are super strong, but it's okay to not be strong sometimes. And there are moments where you're not going to feel strong. And that is totally okay because we are human. I will leave you with these quotes from a great movie called Stand and Deliver. It was one of the first movies I remember seeing with my family, and my dad said, this is one of the movies that, learn from, and you might feel the same way as a student. And at the time, I didn't really understand that. And I realize now how much of this feeling of inadequacy is really created by our environment. And I love this particular movie because it's so inspiring. And I will say, whenever you need a little pick-me-up, just remember, all you need is ganas. All you need is really to get out there and push yourself forward. And it can be so hard, but having these tactics, in case you did not know how to do one of these things or did not know how to get out of your own self-doubt, I really trust that if you apply these, you will feel maybe just a little more confident. But I do believe that this is, after all, a practice. Confidence is a practice. And the more you practice it every day, the more confident you're going to be in battling that imposter syndrome. And the more confident you're going to be in doing the next obstacle and facing those challenges the rest of your life. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. I really hope that you took away something from this. I would absolutely love to stay connected. QR code to my LinkedIn is here in case you want to follow me on Instagram. I post videos on dancing and yoga and other fitness events that I'm trying to do more of, but would love to hear your thoughts on this. And feel free to share any hobbies that you do and that make you feel confident. Thank you again. And for anyone in New York, I will see you Thursday at the networking event in person. Thank you, everyone.